Over the past week, I've been playing a review copy of Beasts of Reincarnation, courtesy of Fictions. This is a new action RPG from Game Freak, the studio best known for Nintendo's Pokemon games. And this game is a massive departure and a far more ambitious project than the type of games Game Freak is known for. But according to multiple reports, much of the game's development was outsourced to several external studios, which likely played a role in allowing the team to tackle a project of this scale. On the gameplay side, this game revolves around a combat system that heavily emphasizes deflections and parries. And as someone who loves this Sekiro-like combat, I really enjoyed my time with Beasts of Reincarnation. Now, this is not a perfect game by any means, and it has some noticeable flaws, like the exploration, which doesn't always feel particularly rewarding, and stretches of narrative downtime that slow the pacing, but the core combat loop kept me engaged even if these issues were hard to ignore at times. On the technical side, this is of course an Unreal Engine 5 game, and visually, Beasts of Reincarnation aims for a beautiful art direction. Unfortunately, the rendering quality does not always do it justice. Most of the time, the game looks dated, especially when it comes to the indirect lighting and overall asset quality. Now, the game relies on software Lumen, but at a relatively low resolution and with limited tracing accuracy. As a result, indirectly lit areas often exhibit noticeable boiling and temporal noise. On top of that, many objects and surfaces receive little to no proper lumen GI coverage, which makes parts of the scene appear unnaturally flat and disconnected from their surroundings. So it's clear that the game isn't targeting the same level of visual fidelity we've come to expect from many modern UE5 titles. And that works to its favor when it comes to raw performance. On the 3660 Ti, the game was able to stay close to 60 FPS at 1440p using the highest preset with DLSS set to quality. As for stuttering, the game performs a brief shader compilation step on first launch, followed by another one when loading a new level. It also compiles shaders asynchronously in the background during gameplay, which results in a large spike in CPU usage and noticeable performance drops. But this behavior was limited to the prologue, and I did not encounter it again in the areas I played afterward. And overall, these measures do a good job of minimizing traditional shader compilation stutters. Some hitching still occurs from time to time, but nothing severe enough to significantly impact the overall experience. When it comes to the graphics menu, this is yet another UE5 game with a limited number of options and poor performance scalability. But before diving into the individual settings, let's first talk about upscaling, because there are a few crucial points worth mentioning. The game ships with an outdated version of DLSS, and by default it only supports the CNN-based preset E. So the first thing I recommend doing is forcing preset K, as it provides noticeably better motion clarity. And if you have a newer RTX card, you can force preset L or M, but I wouldn't recommend it in this game. The newer DLSS 4.5 presets, especially M, significantly increase lumen noise and boiling, as you can see here. If you don't have access to DLSS or FSR4, TSR remains the next best in-game option. It's slower than FSR3, but it delivers a sharper and more stable image. It's also worth noting that both TSR and TAAU balance modes render at almost the same internal resolution as FSR and DLSS quality. Since we're on the subject of image quality, let's talk about post-processing. Similar to what we saw in Halo Campaign Evolved, this game suffers from the deadly combination of aggressive film grain and chromatic aberration. Together, these two effects significantly degrade image quality, making the game look like it's rendering at a lower resolution than it actually is. Thankfully, unlike Halo, these effects are not forced, so there is no need to edit any INI files. Simply setting post-processing to low disables both effects, resulting in a much cleaner image, while also providing a noticeable performance improvement compared to the highest option. As for the rest of the graphics settings, not all of them have a meaningful impact on performance. So let's focus on the ones that are actually worth tweaking, starting with ray tracing. Now, I had a hard time spotting the visual impact of ray tracing in this game. Shadows, reflections, and global illumination looked virtually identical with the setting enabled or disabled. I did find a few areas where it made a difference, although the changes aren't always an improvement. In this scene, enabling ray tracing completely disables SSR without providing any replacement. In another area, it adds extra reflection detail to some rough and semi-glossy materials. Performance-wise in this scene, ray tracing has a small 2% cost, but in another area, the performance hit can increase to around 7% even when the visual difference is barely noticeable. Therefore, I recommend keeping ray tracing disabled. Next, we have texture quality and VRAM limit. The key difference between the two is that texture quality primarily controls the quality of textures and assets, and it doesn't appear to have a significant impact on VRAM usage. VRAM limit, on the other hand, is what significantly affects VRAM usage, as it determines how much video memory is allocated to texture streaming. And on the 3060 Ti, I found the 1 out of 2 VRAM limit to be the best option. The 2 out of 2 option frequently pushed VRAM usage close to the 8GB limit. So if you have an 8GB GPU, I recommend setting texture quality to 3 out of 3 and the VRAM limit to 1 out of 2. Moving on to mesh quality, this setting controls the level of detail of the game's geometry and primarily affects foliage. The higher options allow grass and trees to retain more detailed models both up close and at a distance compared to the lower options. Performance-wise in this scene, there is roughly a 3% cost when going from low to high and about 6% when moving up to highest. So for this one, I recommend high. Let's move on to shadow resolution. As the name suggests, this controls the resolution of the game's shadows. On the performance side, it's one of the most demanding settings in the game. In this scene, there is only a small performance gap between low and medium, but increasing it to high comes with an 8% cost. On some other scenes like this one, the cost can climb to as much as 14%. So for shadow resolution, I recommend medium. There is also a shadow quality setting which controls the quality of shadow filtering, and unlike shadow resolution, it does not have a significant performance impact, so you can safely leave it on high or highest. And the last setting that has a meaningful performance and visual impact is lighting. This one primarily affects volumetric lighting. Low disables the effect completely, while the other options keep it enabled. From medium onward, there is no noticeable visual difference between the options, but despite this, the performance impact is significant, with highest carrying a 17% cost in this scene, while high costs around 6%. So for this one, I recommend medium. So given everything we've discussed so far, these are my recommended settings for Beasts of Reincarnation. Now let's compare the performance of the optimized settings against the highest preset at 1440p using DLSS preset K at ultra quality. And for this comparison, I am using the 0 out of 2 VRAM limit option to avoid any potential VRAM related issues when testing the highest preset. Let's start with this scene. Here there is around a 27% performance advantage with the optimized settings compared to the highest preset. Let's move to another scene with more action, and here we see a slightly wider gap, with the optimized settings delivering around 30% more performance on average than the highest preset. Now this is still a respectable improvement, but I really hope future Unreal Engine 5 games ship with more tweakable graphics settings and separate options for each post-processing effect. One of Unreal Engine 5's biggest strengths has always been its scalability and the level of customization it offers. However, with recent UE5 games like Halo Campaign Evolved, Gothic Remake, and now Beasts of Reincarnation, the graphics menu has become much more limited, and the available settings don't provide the same level of performance scalability that earlier UE5 games did. Hopefully, this doesn't become the standard going forward and developers return to offering more granular graphics menus. Before ending the video, I want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon. If you are able and would like to directly support my work, consider becoming a patron to get early access to my optimized settings, as well as downloads of the highest possible quality of my latest videos, including this one. And a big thank you to all my supporters, and thank you as well for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if not, leave a dislike. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.